Welcome to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday on YouTube, as well as the Action app. You can also find us on demand. Coming up on the show, why the weather forecast isn't scaring Sean Zerillo away from the Mets-Cubs game, plus whether or not to bet on Juan Soto moving forward. We'll also get golf picks, but we start in the NBA with the Celtics staving off elimination as they try to come back from a deficit of 3-0. Before Game 4, Boston's championship odds were at plus 1,600. Now they're at plus 475. So we bring in our analyst, Chris Raybon. Boston extending this series obviously affects the futures market. Do you see any areas to gain an edge?
Yeah, Maria, I think the finals MVP odds are interesting because right now Nikola Jokic is minus 185 to win finals MVP. And Jimmy Butler is next at plus 400. And so if you indeed think Miami is going to hold on to win this series, remember, no one's ever come back from 3-0, then you can bet on Jokic and hedge on Butler. It would be about $30 for every 100 you bet on Jokic that you would bet on Butler, and you would win if either Jokic or Butler wins the finals MVP. Now, the only thing there is you would be fading Jamal Murray, but I think that's a calculated risk because the Joker's just a walking triple-double. So you would profit either way if you bet 100 on Jokic and then 30 for every 100 you bet on Jokic on Jimmy Butler at 4-1 to win finals MVP.
Yeah, that's a wise strategy, kind of a best of both worlds. And I think it is fair to assume that Jokic would win finals MVP over Jamal Murray, similar to what happened in the Western Conference Finals. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference Finals more specifically. So what was your biggest takeaway from last night? For me, it was just Boston hitting threes.
Absolutely. I think we should start there because the 3-point variance finally favored the Boston Celtics. In Game 4, Boston hit 18 of 45 threes. They shot 40%. Miami just 8 of 32, 25%. So that's a 30-point edge for Boston. 10 more made threes. In Games 1 to 3, Miami was averaging about a 13-point edge over Boston in terms of the three-pointers. So just a massive swing, and that's how the NBA goes sometimes. You know, it's a cliche, it's a make or miss league, but with three-pointers, there's a lot of variance, and we see that. But another thing, Maria, that I noticed is the Celtic bigs finally stepped up. Grant Williams played a series-high 29 minutes. Boston was plus 15 in Grant Williams' minutes, and he shot 4 of 6 from 3. And Al Horford, who is really struggling, made 3 out of his 6 3-pointers and scored 12 points, which was his highest since Game 3 of the Philly series, if you can believe that. And Boston was a plus 23 in Horford's minutes. So both of those guys are going to be key because this is a type of series with Miami shooting. You can't play Robert Williams 28 to 30 minutes like you did at the end of that Philadelphia series. So Grant Williams and Al Horford are going to be key if the Boston Celtics want to make a series out of this.
Yeah, it's been a mismatch issue all series with just the way that the Celtics match up against the Heat down low. Now, looking ahead to Game 5, we got 89% of the public on Miami. 72% of the money, though, is on Boston. What does that tell you?
That tells me that 89% of the public is jumping the gun here. You see this big money on Boston. You know the Sharps have been on Boston for better or worse, pretty much all postseason, but especially all series. And so you're going to continue to see this number grow because, again, you're seeing big money come in on Boston. And let's remember now Miami's plus 8, it may get to plus 8.5 or plus 9. You don't even need Miami to win this game. You just need them to keep it close. And so I think Miami's a good bet, but you want to wait because all the big money is coming in on Boston. And even though 89% of the public on Miami, that money is not moving it for the book. So I think, this Boston team struggles to cover at home, just 6-10 against the spread. At home over the last 2 postseasons from round 2 on, 10-5 against the spread on the road. And then Miami, 9-2 as an underdog in this postseason against the spread. 22-13 overall the last two postseasons, 62% against the spread. So Miami, usually a good bet to keep it close. I think you wait and let the money keep coming in on Boston, and then you hammer Miami. Wait.
Yeah, it might actually be a worse thing for the Celtics that they're going back home to TD Garden with all that pressure that their fans can put on them, and just the sort of the memories of the woes there this postseason. But what is your pick then for this game?
Well, you kind of hit on it. I think, Boston's going to come out a little bit tight. They tend to be a little bit tighter at home. And the deeper a series goes, you tend to see, both teams playing a little tighter. Fatigue starts to set in. So I'm going with the Heat Celtics first half under 110.5. I would play this all the way down to 107.5. The first half of the first game, game one, 123 points combined. After that, 104, 107, 106. And the pace has been slowing down, which you tend to see as these series go deeper and deeper. So the pace was just 92 last game. And now you're getting a travel day and just another game with just 1 day of rest. Boston up to 17 playoff games. And Miami's also played 17 games because remember, they had those 2 play-in games. So we've seen this historically. Eastern Conference first half unders with a total of 114 or less, 67% over the past 5 years, 93-45. When you look at game 5 or later, 45-15 to the under, 75%. So I'm betting on maybe Grant Williams not going 4 or 6 again, Al Horford not hitting 50% again. I think you see some tired legs and some missed shots early in Heat Celtics. So I'm going with the first half under.
Elimination games do tend to be so much more methodical. Chris Raybon, thanks so much for hanging with us.
Always a pleasure, Maria.
Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. To baseball, and it's going to be chilly and windy in Chicago this evening as the Cubs continue their series against the Mets. With an expected temperature of 54 degrees and 18-mile-per-hour winds, the full game total is set at 6.5 runs. As we say hello to MLB expert Sean Zerillo. Now, you like the over in that Mets-Cubs game despite the iffy weather conditions. What's the thought behind that?
Yeah, there's been other games this year that have flagged our wind and weather systems that we have at Action Labs with similar conditions where I have been on the under, but I just think this total has maybe been over adjusted. I made it 7.3 on a weather neutral day at Wrigley Field. I would have this total closer to 9.1, 9.2. So adjusted my total down, adjusted my run environment down about 20% compared to a normal day at Wrigley Field. Wrigley typically plays about 3 or 4% below average, even on a normal day, but significant adjustment downward for me. Still make this total 7.25 essentially. So an over 6.5 to about -122, over 7 to about -103, 7 being a key number with a lot of games ending on 1 run. Also potential here too in a low scoring game. We get a 2-2 game that goes to extras. Each team scores a run with that free runner on second base and our total cashes automatically. So just things that you have to take into consideration with a low total like that. And with the balls being juiced, it doesn't necessarily mean just because we have bad weather that we're going to be betting an under. And it's just another reason, too, why I say I always bet my numbers, not systems or not trends. So, yeah, definitely been in alignment with these systems in the past. Since 2005, there's been about a 16% return on investment betting that Wrigley under system from Action Labs. But in the past 3 or 4 years, it only has about a 4% return. And this year, it's actually sitting at 500 through 9 games. So as betting becomes more pervasive, I think people are more aware of weather, and certainly the market in general is just getting sharper. So can't always be betting the way we have in the past, just automatically triggering unders for bad weather. I think this is actually a bit too far of an adjustment downward tonight.
Fair point. And you like another over tonight, which is in the Dodgers-Braves game. Dodgers coming off an 8-1 victory last night. Tell me more.
Yeah, 2 pitchers who I think have just generally overachieved throughout their careers. Tony Gonsolin throughout his career probably allows weaker contact than what we would expect based on his strikeout and walk numbers. But even his expected ERA has generally been in the mid threes throughout his career. And because the Dodgers are a good defensive team, he's stranded a lot of base runners and gotten a lot of extra outs generated by his defense that otherwise would have been hits. He's carried an ERA of around 2.5 for his entire career. So he's basically overachieved by a run compared to that number, overachieved by a run and a half compared to his expected FIP, his strikeout and walk numbers. But, even with that StatCast expected ERA mark, Gonsolin has clearly overachieved for a long period of time. Bryce Elder, too, ERA sitting at 2 this year, expected ERA of 4.5. It does get a lot of ground balls, not a lot of weak contact, but a lot of bailout double plays. And he stranded a lot of runners, 82% strand rate, which is about 10% above the major league average. And everybody sort of regresses towards that mark eventually, except for the elite of the elite, like the Justin Verlanders, who are about 5% even above that mark. But yeah, Elder, the StatCast numbers say that he should be getting hit a little bit harder. That expected ERA 2.5 runs higher than what his actual mark is. Two very good offenses here, and the Dodgers in particular, top 2 against right-handed pitching. So I think a good spot for the Dodgers particularly, but for both teams to potentially get runs. I made the total closer to 10, 9.9. So over 9 to minus 123, over 9.5 to about minus 104. Would prefer those 9s even at the juice if you can get them. Again, key numbers, typically the odd numbers, 7, 9, 11, etc. So want to get that 9 even if you have to pay a little bit extra juice.
There you go. Well, in other news, Juan Soto returned to his old stomping grounds last night, homered in a win over the Nats. He even told a few of his teammates that he would do that, actually delivered. Is now the time to bet on the Padres and or Soto?
Potentially, just looking at playoff odds, Fangraphs still has them at 59% to make the playoffs. Pacoda has them at 77%. You can get them as low as minus 130 to make the playoffs right now, which is about 57%. So even against that Fangraphs number, that's roughly a 2% edge versus Pacoda. It'd be a much more significant edge. They have been woeful with runners in scoring position. They're hitting 184 with runners on base, or runners and, a runner on second or third this season. Typically, the league worst team hits around 220 with runners in scoring position over the course of a full season. That's roughly where the next team closest to them, the Oakland A's, is sitting right now. League average closer to 247. I think the Padres are due for significant offensive regression at some point and should start producing runs with these guys that they have on base and in scoring position. In terms of Soto specifically, though, and how I would value him maybe in an NL MVP race, his odds have floated up. I believe he's the 4th or 5th choice now, roughly 14, 15 to 1. I think it mostly comes down to health for Ronald Acuna Jr. at this point. His athleticism, the speed, the steals, adding on top of the counting stats that he's providing. Soto's best skill is walking and getting on base. And even updated projections have him finishing second to Acuna over the course of a full season, projecting everything out. And Soto's kind of come in line with his expected marks, after underachieving last season. But his numbers aren't flashy. He's going to walk a lot, probably hit 25 to 30 home runs, produce a lot of runs and RBIs, but never really give you that, or at least until he starts swinging more, never going to give you the flashy home run totals. So I just think Ronald Acuna Jr. pacing for about a 40-40 season, a much more likely MVP candidate, probably just going to come down to health for him. But yeah, the Padres to make the playoffs right now, there might be value since the number is really shortened up.
Definitely we'll be keeping an eye out on the Padres. Sean Zerillo, thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Maria.
To golf, and the Charles Schwab Challenge is this week. Scottie Scheffler has the best odds to win the event at plus 400. Then Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, and Victor Hovland all check in at plus 1400. Here's Jason Sobel with some picks.
1 week ago at this time, Jordan Spieth was questionable for the PGA Championship. He not only played with that wrist taped up, but he bettered his score in each of the 4 rounds. For that reason, and a few others I'll tell you about, I love Jordan Spieth for an outright this week at Colonial. Oh, by the way, over his last 10 starts on this golf course, all Spieth has done is a win and 3 runner-up finishes. He absolutely loves playing this golf course. I spoke with some people who've watched as much golf as anybody from Jordan Spieth over the last decade, and they said he is ready to pop. He's ready to play some really good golf. I'm not worried about the wrist injury anymore, and I agree. He is ready to go out there and win a golf tournament. This seems like the perfect place to pick him. If you're looking for a couple of long shot outrights, by the way, take a look at Emiliano Grillo and Eric Cole, both at longer numbers this week, who I think have a good chance of being in contention. As for some prop plays, I'll give you my favorite top 10. Russell Henley. Henley is perennially underrated on the PGA Tour. He's a terrific ball striker. In fact, he has gained strokes with his irons over his last 5 starts. He's a streaky putter, but if that putter gets hot, watch out for him this week. I don't like the fact that he's only played once. That was 5 years ago at Colonial, and so doesn't have much of a track record here, but I'm not too worried about it. He's playing some very good golf right now. A couple other potential top 10 plays. I'm sticking with the H's. Brian Harmon and Tom Hoagie, each guys who are very good ball strikers. They like this golf course. I could see them playing well this week as well.
For more on how to bet the Charles Schwab Challenge, check out the Gimme today at 5:30 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube or Twitter pages. Today's show featured NBA, MLB, and PGA picks. Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's all for this episode of Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again Thursday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.